begin our recording. So hi everybody. Like we said, this will be recorded for everybody that wasn't able to make it. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for listening in. I'm super excited to kind of jump in with things. Just a little introduction. I'm Megan, integrative health practitioner at Infinite Wellness, and I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get rolling today. And if you have any questions ever, feel free to leave them in the chat here in the Zoom chat, and we can kind of answer them as needed. There will be some time for questions at the end, and any questions that we don't get to, we can always address them at a later time. So today we are going to specifically talk about the relationship between your gut and mood. So we are going to discuss specifically the connection, and we are going to give you some strategies so that way you can learn how to identify how to overcome different mood-based challenges. Like I said, my name is Megan. I'm an integrative health practitioner at Infinite Wellness, and we have been noticing some trends in our practice of a lot of people coming to us with lower mood, lower energy, and we just felt like this was a very much needed challenge to sort of just like help you replenish and also feel very renewed in your energy. So let's go ahead and let's get into the relationship between your gut and your mood. So what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the gut-brain axis. We're going to talk about gut and mood. We're also going to talk about nutrient deficiencies and mood. We'll talk about imbalances in mood. We'll talk about weight gain and mood. And then we'll also give you some strategies on how to overcome these challenges and then provide you with essential nutrient support. And then we'll recap everything. Like I said, if you have any questions whatsoever during the time of the challenge, feel free to drop them on in the chat and I will answer them a little bit later in our time together. So we are going to just kind of introduce this whole concept together. So I really am fascinated by the gut microbiome just as a whole. I just feel like it's very connected with a lot of the other components in our body. So oftentimes when people are coming into me and they're like, I have, mood-based disorders, whether it's anxiety, depression, or just low mood and fatigue in general, I'm looking at the gut and kind of understanding things from that perspective, in addition to looking at their nutrient deficiencies. So some key points to kind of address like right off the bat here. Gut and mood are very closely interconnected. Think about your body as this holistic perspective and this whole picture. So each different organ system is all interconnected with another organ system. And that's the way that we like to look at things from a functional medicine lens. We're not saying, only looking at this piece, we're looking at the whole picture. And oftentimes when there's deficiencies and imbalances within the body, they're likely present in other places as well, too. So speaking on nutrient deficiencies and gut imbalances and also weight gain play a role in our mood as well, more specifically as well. And we'll get into that more along throughout the rest of the week here, but I just want to kind of like plant the seed now so that way we can continue to encourage it to come through. Can you change this? Okay, 1 second here. I'm just gonna change my view really quickly. Presenter view. Okay. Now you can also see me as well too. Okay, so if you guys can't see this, just let me know in the chat here. But the other thing that we are also going to address here is we're going to explore some strategies to help you enhance your mental well-being and also just different factors that are related to mood and gut too. And if you are wanting to read a very fascinating book on mind or gut health and also your mind, this is a really beautiful book. It's called The Mind-Gut Connection. This is one of my favorite quotes from the book. It's taking care of your gut can lead to a happy and healthier mind. And just think of that in the whole concept of replenish and renew. Taking care of your gut can allow you to be very replenished and renewed in your health as well too. Okay, let's talk about gut-brain axis. So if you aren't familiar with the gut-brain axis, it's a bidirectional communicational pathway that links your gut to your brain. So again, thinking in terms of the whole functional medicine approach where your gut and your brain are actually related and all the different organ systems are connected together. So there's some key components that you want to consider as well when you're thinking about your gut-brain axis. You want to consider your microbiome, which essentially is defined as a very diverse community of different microorganisms organisms, residing within your gut. Then you've got neurotransmitters, and think of these as the little chemical messengers that are facilitating communication between your neurons. So we want to make sure we have adequate amounts of different neurotransmitters so that way we can produce the energy that we need from a physical and mental perspective. We also want to tie in your immune system. So 70% of your immune system is found within your gut microbiome, and many of you are probably familiar with what your immune system does. It is your body's defense mechanism against different pathogens and also different foreign substances. So when you're thinking about this from a holistic perspective, if you have different things that are triggering your immune system to respond, it's going to allow those nutrients to be utilized so that way your body can fight off whatever is happening inside of it. And when that's the case, it leaves little room for you to have the different nutrients that you need for other essential kind of organizations and different processes that happen in the body. So think stress reduction, think about making your hormones, think about your thyroid production as well too. We need different micronutrients to ensure that we have that. And if our immune system's always on, it's not allowing for that to happen. So then when we think about it in the role of communication, your microbiome influences different neurotransmitter production. We're going to hone in really specifically on serotonin. Think of serotonin as your happy, feel good transmitter. So 80% of that is made within your gut lining. So if you are not having, now the presenter window is up. Goodness. 1 second. I'm just going to fix this. I want to make sure you guys can see me as I talk here too. So, of course, there's a little bit of a technical difficulty. Thank you for bearing with me. We will continue this presentation in just a minute. Okie doke. Okay. Presents. I hope this is working. Okay. If it's not, we can kind of go from there, but we're going to continue. Okay. So, your microbiome influences different neurotransmitter production. We're going to hone in on serotonin. Like I said, it's the happy, feel good transmitter. So a lot of times if you are, in a more like anxiety or depressed state, or you have lower mood, oftentimes serotonin production is very, very low. And I like to look at the gut microbiome, and there's a certain association of different micronutrients that are needed to make enough serotonin. So we're going to look at that connection. Neurotransmitters also are impacting and affect your gut motility and function as well too. And again, tying in the immune system here, the immune system responds to signals from the gut microbiota as well too. So again, if your body's constantly fighting the danger that it sees there, it's going to deplete you of essential nutrients as well, leaving you depleted, leaving you tired, leaving you have brain fog and all those different symptoms. So let's talk about some research findings as well too, because I think a lot of these concepts are really great, but having the science behind them is really where we like to shine ourselves a little bit differently from other people that you might hear online and things like that. A lot of our approaches and all of our approaches are based on science. So research has shown that there's a very strong correlation between your gut health, thinking mood disorders like anxiety and depression. So studies also show that there are alterations in different gut microbiota compositions in individuals with different mood disorders. So if you are working through any of these different concerns, you want to be mindful of what your microbiome looks like, and also, different nutrient deficiencies as well. So I think a lot of times people think about the gut as mostly our digestive system. So it's like breaking down different nutrients, but there's so much that the gut microbiome is actually doing that you have to keep that in mind. And it's a very complex structure that's also not only like helping you digest your food, but it's transporting all of our different micronutrients to different parts of the body as well. So again, the significance of the microbiome here is that you've got a very diverse and balanced microbiome is essential for optimal mental health. And if there's any imbalances within the gut microbiome, likely your mental health can be on the lower end of things, or not as optimal as we would like it to be. So gut bacteria produce different neurotransmitters and regulate inflammation, which can impact mood regulation. So inflammation, I know, is a really broad spectrum term, and I know that it's used for a lot of different ways and sort of identifying different disease-based principles. And I think it's sort of, sometimes it can be like a very overly simple approach to things. Like everybody's like, you're just inflamed, just eat a very anti-inflammatory diet. You want to make sure you understand the root cause to it, because a lot of that can be contraindicated. And also you can have that inflammation present in the brain, present in other parts of the body, that can contribute to different mood-based stressors there. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight on the way in which we look at mood-based dysregularities for particular people as it relates to the gut microbiome. So this is a snapshot of an organic acid test. And we'll talk about what an organic acid test is in just a second here, but just for some context, this test is looking at the metabolites. So essentially, it's a urine-based test that looks at the metabolites of your metabolism, but also the rest of the body as well, too. So I want you to really focus on the caneric acid right here. And you can see that it falls out of the range here. We want things to be within this green range. And there's some low markers and there's some high markers and things like that. For context, this particular person was struggling with a lot of anxiety and mood-based disorders, sleep-based disturbances as well, too. She's a younger individual, but you can see how she was a little bit out of balance in some of the essential, particular metabolites that would allow her to produce adequate amounts of serotonin. So we're going to kind of break that down a little bit more for you. I won't go through all of it because it's a little bit too intense for this conversation, but let's talk about the caneric acid more specifically. I want to just give you context on what the organic acid test actually is. So again, when you're looking at an organic acid test, you're looking at metabolites. So you're looking at the breakdown products of things. And you are looking at it within the context of the microbiome more specifically. So this is the connection that I want to make with people when I'm talking about gut and mood together. So we saw in this particular individual that her caneric acid was on the higher end. So, for reference, she was at a 33.2. And while the range is between a 7.8 and a 54, you still want to fall within this green range here. And when we're thinking about things from a functional medicine lens, we're thinking optimal. We don't want things to be too high, too low. We want it sweet spot in the middle. We want it optimal because that's how you feel really bad, really good and things like that. But when you're on the outskirts of things, that's when things start to feel a little hairy. And that's when you start to have symptoms, and that's just not okay. That's not optimal health there. So back to caneric acid here. You can see that it was on the higher end of things. We need to make sure that we have enough caneric acid to make sure we are having enough production of B6, which is a precursor to serotonin. Remember, I talked a little bit about serotonin. It's that happy, feel-good transmitter. It is required for you to have enough of this acid, particularly to convert tryptophan to serotonin. And I know that sounds a little bit too sciencey here, but you need to make sure you have that B6 to convert it to serotonin, so that way your body can make more of that happy, feel-good transmitter. And if you're out of balance in any capacity, it often results in individuals having more of that brain fog or that lower mood. And adequate amounts of serotonin are needed to make melatonin as well, too. So I mentioned that this individual particularly struggled with some sleep-based disorders. So if you also are not producing enough of your serotonin, likely you're also not producing enough melatonin as well. We need to make sure we have enough melatonin so we can sleep through the night. And even sleep disturbances are a very big connection with mood regulation as well, too. So thinking about that on all lens, again, you can start to see how holistic this becomes too. Now, with a high caneric acid here on the body, it suggests that there's potentially some stress, whether that be from viruses, toxins, heavy metals, GI issues. You need to do like more of a specific deep dive into things to really understand exactly what could be the root cause there. And that's what you do through blood work and through functional testing as well. All right. So nutrient deficiencies and mood. So here are a few key nutrients for mood regulations. They're the most common and the most prominent ones here. You've got omega-3 fatty acids, you've got vitamin D, you've got B vitamins, and you've got magnesium as well. So the impact of these deficiencies are that if you don't have enough adequate amounts of omega-3s, it's linked to an increased risk of depression and anxiety. Remember, we're looking at this in the context of mood. So there's other reasons and other ways in which omega-3 deficiencies can present themselves, but in the context of mood, you're thinking mostly of an increased risk of depression and anxiety. If you've got lower than optimal vitamin D levels, which most people do, most people don't fall within that sweet spot. And on a blood work panel that goes from the ranges from like anywhere from 330, I'm sorry, to 100, and it's not quite in that sweet spot. I like to typically see people between like a 50 to a 70. That's more of that optimal range that you want to see people in, especially for vitamin D. So you could get your yearly blood work done and your doctor's like, okay, your vitamin D looks great, or anything like that. But most people are very deficient in vitamin D. Remember that vitamin D is that sunshine hormone, and it brings that happiness and everything like that. So a lower level of vitamin D is often associated with mood disorders like depression as well. So in addition to supplementation and getting out into the sun as we approach the warmer weather and the days are, brighter for a long period of time, that's when we're able to really get a lot of that more vitamin D in there. So I would encourage, if you do anything, maybe going outside for a little walk or something like that could be a really great start for you to sort of like impact those vitamin D levels to improve your mood. B vitamins. So we talked a little bit about vitamin B6 specifically as it relates to serotonin, but we need a complex of vitamin Bs, and there's about 12 or so different B vitamins, and there's even more. But having deficiencies in B vitamins is linked to altered neurotransmitter function. So again, think serotonin here, and mood-based disturbances as well. Something to note is that part of your B vitamins are made within your gut lining. So if you've got any sort of gut imbalance, any gut microbiome imbalance, likely you're also going to be deficient in B vitamins as well. They really are helpful for stress reduction as well, too. So again, that's why it's really important to approach things from a holistic perspective. Magnesium. This is one of the first minerals that gets depleted in times of stress oftentimes, and there's so many different forms of magnesium, and I think it gets really complicated for a lot of people, but utilizing the right magnesium for your specific case is really helpful, and you can only do that by understanding the different symptoms that you have and then working with somebody to be like, okay, is this the right magnesium for me? Otherwise, it could be really stimulating for you, make you feel really drowsy. So inadequate levels are contributing to anxiety, depression, and they are also they play a role in neurotransmitter regulation. So think serotonin, you also need to make sure you have enough magnesium for serotonin production as well, too. So hopefully you can kind of start to see like how different nutrient deficiencies play a role in your mood as a whole. Now, let's talk a little bit more about gut imbalances and mood. So we already hinted at some of these like imbalances in contributing to our mood and then contributing to different nutrient deficiencies, but I'm going to go into different types of different imbalances for you, maybe things that you're already familiar with, or maybe things that are on the newer side of you. So first, dysbiosis. So dysbiosis, just think of that as imbalance of gut microbiome composition. So how that plays a role into your mood is it is linked to disorders like depression and anxiety. Again, thinking about how that disbalance of bacteria is taking away from different nutrient deficiencies, and that's then contributing to a lot of these nutrients being depleted and not being in an optimal state for optimal mood health. So the mechanism, if you think about an altered production of neurotransmitters by the gut bacteria, it will affect your brain function and also mood regulation. So that's basically how dysbiosis can be impacted by your mood there. Now, many of you may be familiar with the concept of leaky gut, and if you're not, if you're new to a lot of these conversations and haven't really been following us for that long, essentially the composition of your gut is tied together by these tight junctions, and oftentimes as we get older, or the more stress that we are under for whatever the case is, different dietary things or whatever the case is, over time, these tight junctions can weaken and they can allow for holes to happen. And that allows for different food particles to come in, or maybe different toxins, different bacteria, pathogens, things like that, that comes into our gut wall and then enters in through our bloodstream. And when that happens, basically our immune system is on high alert and it's tagging those different pieces, and our body's wanting to get into a rhythm of attacking that. So how that is impacted on our mood is it's associated with increased inflammation, and that can be led to different mood-based disturbances. Like I said, inflammation is like kind of a tag-all term, but in this case here, we don't want to be in a state of inflammation as we are looking to improve our mood. We want our body to be in an anti-inflammatory state because that allows for body to be in balance and optimal. So the contribution for intestinal permeability is basically that toxins and inflammatory molecules can reach the brain, and that is what's impacting and influencing mood and behavior. So think, and when I say toxins, it doesn't have to be just like toxic food or anything like that. Think heavy metals here as well. Heavy metals are something that really pass that gut-brain barrier as well. So those are some other things that you want to think about when you're thinking about intestinal permeability. Okay, so one more thing, we're going to talk about inflammation because I feel like we've talked a little bit about it, but I want to kind of bring it full circle here for you. So, the way in which inflammation is connected to a lot of mood-based disorders is that chronic inflammation is implicated in a lot of anxiety and depression for most individuals. Likely, these individuals are also working through other health concerns as well, too, whether it be with their thyroid, whether it be with their hormones, whether it be with their gut health. Honestly, the list could go on here. It could be blood sugar dysregulation, it could be any of those things. Chronic inflammation is presenting itself in other ways, and that is implicating itself in individuals that are more depressed and anxious. So that's why anxiety and depression are a symptom of what you're feeling. They're not the whole picture. You've got to look deeper to understand exactly what is contributing to this. So oftentimes there's inflammation related to it. So the way in which this actually happens is that there's inflammatory molecules that disrupt your neurotransmitter function, and they impair mood regulation. So again, think about that serotonin mostly. And I'm using serotonin because that's sort of an easy one, but know that there's other neurotransmitters that are really essential for our mood as well too. So again, if you've got a lot of inflammation, your immune system is on track to really get rid of that inflammation. That's its job, that's its primary job, and it's not going to stop just because it's, feeling like it should. It's going to keep going, and it's going to try to get rid of the bad stuff as much as it can. And it doesn't have that turn off point, and that's when our body like overcompensates and it says like, okay, because you're using all of these nutrients, we're going to integrate a whole inflammatory response as well too. So some of the main contributing factors for a lot of inflammation, typically for many people, are gut imbalances, their dietary factors, and there's lifestyle choices. So when I say dietary factors, you're also looking at what are you having in your nutrition? Are you eating in a way that's really serving you to be in the most optimal state? Or are your lifestyle choices, like, are you using alcohol? Are you smoking? Are you super stressed out all the time? Those are things that also contribute to our role in inflammation as well too. And the goal is to be as inflammatory as possible, no matter in whatever states of the word. It's just helpful for all, different processes of the body. So let's talk a little bit about weight gain and also mood as well too. So when we are thinking about um, sorry, when we are thinking about weight gain and mood, a lot of times that can have an impact on our mental health. It can lead individuals to having lower self-esteem, maybe some depression sometimes, but it's also stress. It's not just stressful on our body because we have that extra weight, but it's the stress of like, how do I do it? How do I lose it? Do I intermittent fast? Do I do those things? And, while there's no wrong way to necessarily do it, you know, we want to make sure you're doing it in a very optimal way. And, intermittent fasting could be leading to some more stress on the body as well, too, and not allowing you to be in a space where you're able to lose the weight that you want to lose. And so when we relate weight gain and mood together, how I want you to think about it is that in regards to your gut health, there could be potentially some imbalances in your gut microbiome that are also and also maybe some increase in intestinal permeability that can contribute to weight gain and mood disturbances. So just to kind of like tie that back together and explain that a little bit more, if you've got more of that bad bacteria than good bacteria, potentially you're looking at a situation where your body doesn't feel like it's able to lose the weight that it wants to lose because it's denoting stress. And when we have higher levels of cortisol, or we are having a lot of inflammation in the body, it doesn't create that safe space for our body to be like, okay, I can release this fat there too, which is why sometimes that adding that extra level of intermittent fasting isn't always the best way possible. And then we talked a little bit about intestinal permeability already, but how that would relate to, weight gain itself is it would allow bad things to pass through, activating that immune-based response. And oftentimes, when we are looking at individuals and helping them lose weight in our practice, we're looking at nutrient deficiencies. And a lot of times, when I'm particularly working with people and looking at blood work or other functional medicine lab tests, I noted that maybe they're not absorbing all the nutrients that they need to correctly. And that could be due to some of the imbalances that they have in in their gut microbiome more specifically, or maybe they've got a bug that's taking in all of that nutrients and their body's not able to kind of distribute it to other places. So an inadequate intake of key nutrients like omega-3 fatty acids or vitamin D and magnesium can also play a role in individuals not able to lose the weight or other mood imbalances. So I hope you're able to understand that there is a connection between not only your gut health, but the way your body's able to receive the nutrients that it needs in order to do different processes, and also your mood as well too. We really kind of like focused on the mood more specifically, but they are all forming a web of influences for not only weight management, but also your mental well-being too. So again, that's why we're taking a very like functional approach, getting you to an optimal level, because once your body feels optimal, then it's like, okay, I could lose a little bit of weight, or I don't need to have all that brain fog. I can help you improve all that energy too. So, how do we start to begin to overcome some of these challenges? Because that's basically why most people are coming to us. Is they recognize that there is a concern that they have, or there are challenges that they aren't able to clearly or adequately fix themselves. And it's not as simple as just eating less or taking the supplement or anything like that. There's so much more to really understanding your health that it's not really talked about to the best degree, especially within our society. And so, different dietary modifications that you can consider would be more fiber-rich foods. And potentially, if you don't have any overgrowth or any climb, you can consider some fermented foods. They're really nice to feed the good bacteria, and also prebiotics as well. So these are foods that feed the good bacteria within our gut microbiome. So we need to make sure that we have a good balance of good bacteria and bad bacteria. Oftentimes, the the misconception is that we want to have a lot of good bacteria and like no bad bacteria. The truth is you need a balance of everything. You need to be able to fight off bad things when is necessary, but you never want to get to a point where you're out of range there, because once you're out of range, that's when things start to accumulate in symptoms. So fiber-rich foods, based foods, and prebiotics are all really helpful into building a more stronger, resilient, good bacteria army. But you also have to make sure that you balance that with adequate amounts of supports of probiotics and supplementation. So this is where a probiotic can be really helpful in restoring and maintaining the healthy balance of gut bacteria. So, some specific strains that I particularly like to consider are Lactobacillus or Saccharomyces boulardii as well too. But the truth is you really have to be intentional and understand exactly what probiotic is right for you, because not every single probiotic across the board is going to do what you think it might do. And if you've got overgrowth, or if you've got other concerns happening within the gut that you uncover through blood work or through even lab-based testing, which is more specific to the gut. So thinking about stool or urine-based testing, a plain simple probiotic isn't going to get you to your answer. It's going to maybe help you feel better for a little bit, but then, maybe in a few weeks, you'll start to notice a lot of those symptoms creep up again. So it's really important to be intentional about the different strains, because some strains are really helpful for anxiety and depression, and some are really good for other things as well, too. So any additional supplementation or probiotic supplementation is very individualized based on the blood or lab work that we do with a client, and that would all be done through a practitioner. So you would be working with somebody to really identify how you can optimize anything that you are working through. But then there's also lifestyle interventions too, because food and supplements are amazing, but they're one piece of the puzzle. The rest of the puzzle needs to be incorporated in terms of stress management, maybe sleeping as well too, regular exercise and hydration. But you have to also work in balance with your body as well too, making sure that you are, not incorporating too much at like hit training all the time if you're not eating in a way that's really healthy and sustainable for your body, because that can also deplete you in nutrients as well. So making sure that you are working with somebody who understands all of the pieces of the puzzle is really helpful. And I realize this sounds like a lot, so that's why taking one of these blocks at a time is really helpful. So oftentimes, many of my clients, patients, they will start with nutrition because that's like a really big block. And then maybe they'll incorporate ways to incorporate regular exercise and then kind of and work from there. And it's a process, and it's not a race necessarily. You just have to do the things that are going to be really beneficial for you in the short term here. So just to kind of overview this a little bit more, there are specific things from a dietary perspective that you can incorporate to enhance your gut microbiome to help improve mood. There are supplements that you can consider as well, but then there's also the necessary lifestyle interventions that should be considered too. So how would you necessarily get support from us? We would, consider running blood work with you, potentially doing a stool test to identify imbalances within your microbiome. You could run an organic acid test like I showed you over here. This organic acid test this is only one piece of the puzzle. It has over 100 or so different markers for you to look at things so you can understand exactly what's happening from a neurotransmitter perspective. So running something like an organic acid test would help you understand different metabolites and neurotransmitters for you. So that way you can identify the reasons why anxiety and depression could be so prominent, or lower mood and brain fog could be so prominent for your case. Working with a practitioner is the best way to understand the supplementation that's right for you, and also for you to replace any nutrient deficiencies for optimal function for not only your mood, but also weight as well too. So I want to recap things a little bit because I recognize that there are a lot of things that we talked about today, and I want to make sure that we put things in the most simple way possible. So you want to make sure that you understand the imbalances within your gut microbiome, because it allows you to understand the story as to what's happening in the body. And without understanding the story, you're not really able to understand how to overcome certain concerns that you might have with your health. And that's the really big key takeaway here. When you are deficient in nutrients within the body, it's your body's compromising and it isn't able to perform as optimally as needed. But without understanding the story, you're not going to be understanding how and why you might be deficient in certain nutrients too. And I think it's really important to also note too that within different seasons of life, you may be more depleted than others. There's seasons of, whether you have gone through pregnancy, or maybe your partner went through pregnancy, or you've suffered a loss, or you had a traumatic event happen, or maybe you're just in a season of really heavy work. Whatever the case is, you're going to note that there are going to be times when you're more depleted than others. And being able to stay in tune with your body and have the tools and resources to really kind of step back and be like, okay, what kind of symptoms am I feeling? How can I improve these symptoms? And what kind of support can I put in forth for my body to, help me as I get through this season of life? And the truth is, like, you're not going to be in the season of life for a long period of time. You just have to understand how to support your body through different seasons, because oftentimes what I see in practice for a lot of people is they'll go through, a really difficult season, or they're in the midst of a really difficult season. And that's when a lot of these health concerns start to come into fruition for them. And it goes back to that rain barrel sort of analogy that maybe you've heard. If you haven't heard it, essentially it's the idea in which your body is a rain barrel, and a rain barrel is obviously collecting rain. So over time, your body's filling up, over time is filling up, filling up, filling up. But then it reaches a point where it's just overflowing. And what that overflowing component is really where you're manifesting a lot of health concerns and things like that. And that's often the reason why individuals will come and they'll say, I was feeling good until maybe like a year ago when this, and this happened. And it makes sense because our body is only so resilient, and it can only take so much stress before it allows us to be depleted. So, again, understanding how to really put yourself in the position to keep yourself more resilient will allow you to be in a more renewed state where you're able to really take on anything that life puts at you. So I know that was a long-winded explanation, but essentially that's the theory behind functional medicine. It's about using everything nutrition, supplementation, lifestyle in a way to provide you with a very rich and very nourishing life. So that way you can lead a very optimal life for not only yourself, but then you can kind of like pass that on to your family and things like that. But the whole point of it is that you need to understand why there are different imbalances that are happening within the gut microbiome. So think of your gut as more than just part of your body. Think of it that helps you digest food. Think of it as a window into understanding many of your underlying root imbalances. So that is the end of our presentation for day one. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, this will be recorded, so if you want to check back in or anything like that, we will have that recorded and sent out to you tomorrow. If there are any questions, I can certainly take them in the chat about anything. But if you don't want to put it in the chat for whatever reason, you can send an email here at my info@myinfinitewellness.net. And then there is also a little QR code that takes you to a consultation. So if you want to have a more specific conversation to me, if something stuck out to you, then you can link to that QR code, and we can just chat for 30 minutes and just kind of like understand things a little bit more too. Let me just see if I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quickly, just see if there's anything that kind of popped up in the chat. Let me see. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now, which is totally fine. So like I said, the recording will be available to you guys tomorrow morning. You'll get the chance to see the slides and all the things. But if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Be sure to fill out the prompts and come join us tomorrow at 12 o'clock for day two. Okay? Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.